There is a reason this case never appeared in a headline. No press conference, no dramatic announcement, just a thin folder, filed under a regional review board, stamped, dated, and quietly archived. The first entry is ordinary. Too ordinary. March 14th, 8:17 a.m. A residential address in Northern Europe. No prior incidents, no medical flags. The note is brief. Child referred for evaluation after producing symbols of unknown origin. No mention of danger, no mention of belief, just procedure. At that point, no one was looking for a mystery. The child's name was Noah, 4 years old. He lived with his mother, Claire, and his older sister, Elena. 7 years old. A small apartment. Second floor. Quiet street. According to school records, Noah barely spoke in class. Not withdrawn, not anxious. Just economical with words. Teachers noted something else. He drew. Every day. Not houses, not animals. Patterns. Repeating forms. Tight lines. Careful spacing. One teacher wrote, "He erases more than he draws," as if correcting something. The first incident happened at home. Late afternoon. Claire was in the kitchen, the sound of water running, a radio playing low. Noah sat on the living room floor, paper spread around him, wax crayons, broken tips. When Claire walked back in, she didn't say anything at first. She just stood there. The paper wasn't filled. It was arranged. Rows, vertical marks, small figures repeating at fixed distances, not decorative, not random. She didn't ask what it was, not yet. She watched him switch colors. Brown, gold, black. Slowly, no rushing. Finally she spoke. "Did someone show you this?" Noah didn't look up. "No." One word. Then nothing. Later that evening, Elena leaned over the drawings. She didn't smile, didn't joke. She traced one of the symbols with her finger. Stopped, pulled her hand back. "I saw this," she said. Claire looked at her. "Where?" Elena shrugged. "Don't know." She didn't finish the sentence. That night, Elena woke up twice. She didn't scream, didn't cry. She sat upright in bed. Claire found her like that the second time, eyes open, breathing steady. "I don't like the room with no windows," Elena said. Claire waited. No follow-up came. The next morning, Noah took a different paper, thicker. He drew fewer symbols. But when he finished, he pushed it toward his mother. Tapped one mark, then another. "These go first." Claire folded the paper. She didn't throw it away. She didn't know why. 3 weeks later, the file was opened. Not by a historian, not by a journalist, by a child psychologist. Routine referral. The psychologist would later write, "The child does not describe fantasy narratives. He identifies structure." That sentence would be underlined in red. Much later. At this stage, nothing supernatural had been claimed. No past lives. No ancient names. Just a 4-year-old boy drawing things no one remembered teaching him. And a 7-year-old girl who stopped sleeping through the night. That's where the record begins. Not with belief. Not with wonder. With paperwork. And silence. The psychologist did not use the word ancient. Not at first. Her report was careful, measured, no adjectives that could invite interpretation. She listed observations instead. Fine motor control above age range. Repetitive symbol construction. No accompanying narrative fantasy. No emotional reinforcement from parents. And one final line, added almost as an afterthought. The symbols do not correspond to any alphabet familiar to the child. That line would matter later. The evaluation room was small. White walls, low shelves, a table designed for children. Noah sat across from her, feet not touching the floor. He didn't swing them. He watched the pencil in her hand. When she slid a blank page toward him, he didn't hesitate. No warm-up drawings, no test shapes. He started in the center. Straight line, short pause, another line. She noticed something subtle. He wasn't inventing. He was recalling placement. When she asked him what the drawing was, he answered without lifting his head. Marks. That was it. She tried again. Do they mean something? Noah stopped drawing, looked at the page, then at her. They stay. He went back to the paper. At home, Elena began keeping to the hallway light at night. Not because of fear. At least she never said that. She would stand there quietly, hand on the switch. Sometimes she spoke. Not loudly. More like checking if someone was listening. The floor was colder before, she said once. Claire asked what she meant. Elena shrugged. I don't know. She didn't add anything else. The first external comparison happened by accident. Claire had scanned one of Noah's drawings. She planned to show it to a school counselor. The scanner software misread the image. Instead of tagging it as child drawing, it flagged it as text. That shouldn't have happened. Curious, Claire enlarged the image, zoomed in. The spacing wasn't random, the margins were consistent, and the symbols, they repeated in sequences, not decorative repetition, structured repetition. She forwarded the image to the psychologist. No comment. Just the file. The reply came the next morning. Where did he see this? Claire stared at the screen, typed back. He didn't. The psychologist contacted a colleague, not an archaeologist, not yet, a cognitive linguist, someone who specialized in pattern recognition and early symbol formation. The linguist printed the image, pinned it next to known early writing systems, Sumerian, Proto-Sinaitic, early Egyptian. Nothing matched. But something else stood out. The direction. These were meant to be read, she said, tapping the page. Not drawn. When asked how she could tell, she hesitated, then answered carefully. Because whoever made them expected someone else to understand them. That was the first moment the file changed tone, still cautious, still skeptical, but no longer dismissive. Elena's school reported a change around the same time. She had stopped participating in group reading. Instead, she stared at the classroom clock. Not the time, the movement. Tick. Pause. Tick. When her teacher asked what she was thinking about, Elena answered, I'm waiting for it to stop. What? The sound. There was no sound. At least none anyone else could hear. The psychologist requested a second session. This time she recorded it. Audio only. No cameras. Noah sat with crayons again. Different colors. Same order. She slid one of his earlier drawings in front of him, asked a simple question. Did you make this? He nodded. Why? Noah looked at the paper, then away. Because it goes there. She waited. He didn't continue. She didn't push. Later, reviewing the audio, she noticed something. There was a pause, almost 5 seconds, between her question and his answer. Not hesitation. Listening, as if he had waited for confirmation from somewhere else. By the end of the month, the file had grown. New tabs, cross-references, no conclusions, just questions, and one repeated note in the margins. No external exposure identified, no documentaries, no books, no tablets, nothing. Claire stopped inviting friends over. Not intentionally, it just happened. The apartment felt different when people spoke too loudly. Noah didn't like it. He didn't complain. He simply gathered his papers and moved them into the bedroom. One evening, Elena followed him, sat beside him, watched. After a long while, she asked, "Do you remember the room?" Noah nodded. She swallowed. "Me too." They didn't explain which room. They didn't need to. The linguist sent a final email before stepping back. It was brief, professional, but the last line was unexpected. If these symbols are not learned, then they are referenced, and reference implies prior knowledge. No one replied to that email. It was added to the file, filed, stamped. At this point, no one had said the word past. No one had said memory. But the silence around the drawings had changed. It was no longer empty. It was crowded. The first name appeared quietly, not during an evaluation, not in front of a specialist, at the kitchen table, early morning, light still low. Claire was rinsing a cup when Noah spoke. Not loudly, not to get attention, almost to himself. That one was wrong. Claire turned. Which one? He pointed at a paper from the day before. A single symbol had been crossed out, then replaced, carefully. She watched him for a moment before asking, "How do you know?" Noah shrugged. They didn't use that name yet. Claire didn't respond right away. She dried her hands, sat down. What name? Noah hesitated, just for a second, then said it, softly. Ankerson Ra. The sound of the name sat in the room. Claire didn't repeat it. She didn't ask him to spell it. She asked something else. "Where did you hear that?" Noah shook his head. "I didn't." He went back to drawing. That afternoon, Elena came home early. She dropped her backpack near the door and stood still. Didn't move. Claire noticed. "Elena." Elena blinked, then spoke, as if continuing a thought she had already been having. "I remembered her today." Claire didn't ask who. She waited. "Elena, my name was different," she said. "Before." She swallowed. "Nofret Ore." The pronunciation wasn't perfect, but it was close. Too close. Claire wrote both names down that night. Not in the file, on a separate piece of paper. She folded it once, then again. Put it in a drawer. Didn't open a browser. Didn't search. Not yet. The psychologist received the update 2 days later. No commentary. Just the names. There was a pause before the reply came. Longer than usual. When it arrived, it was cautious. Children sometimes invent names that sound historical. Then, another message, sent an hour later. However, these phonetic structures are uncommon. She requested permission to consult an external specialist. Not publicly, not officially. Off the record. The specialist was an Egyptologist, mid-career, museum-affiliated, used to misinterpretations, used to over-enthusiastic parents. Claire did not speak to him directly. The psychologist summarized instead, carefully. No claims, just facts. 4-year-old boy, 7-year-old sister. No exposure. Repeated symbols. Now, names. The Egyptologist asked for one thing: to see the original drawings. He didn't react immediately. He adjusted his glasses, turned the pages slowly, didn't smile, didn't frown. He stopped at one page longer than the others, a sequence of symbols near the bottom. He traced the spacing with his finger. "These aren't decorative," he said. Then, almost reluctantly, "They're structured, like labels." He was quiet for a moment, then added, "The names you mentioned, they're not common royal names." The psychologist waited. "They resemble transitional naming conventions," he continued. "Used briefly. Not widely documented." She asked what that meant. He chose his words carefully. "It means," he said, "they're not the kind of names people usually pick up accidentally." No conclusions were written. The Egyptologist declined further involvement. Not because he thought it was impossible, because, as he later said in an email, "This is outside my professional comfort." That email was archived, not shared. Around this time, Elena stopped correcting Noah. When he drew, she watched. Sometimes she nodded. Once she whispered, "That's closer." Claire heard it from the hallway. She didn't interrupt. At night, Elena began waking at specific times. Claire started noting them. 1:12, 2:48, 4:3. No crying, no panic. Just awake. Sitting. When asked what she was doing, Elena said, "Counting." "What?" "Steps." "How many?" Elena looked at her. Didn't answer. The file was upgraded. No announcement. Just a change in status. From routine observation to sensitive review. That meant oversight. It also meant restraint. No recordings without consent. No outside disclosure. And one instruction, underlined: avoid suggestive language. Everyone complied. No one said reincarnation. No one said memory. But no one said imagination anymore either. The last entry of that month is short, written by the psychologist. Children do not elaborate when prompted. They respond only when asked the correct question. There is a margin note next to it. Written later. Different ink. Who decides what the correct question is? At home, Noah finished another drawing. He slid it toward Elena. She looked at it, then pushed it back gently. "Not yet," she said. Noah didn't argue. He waited. Doubt didn't arrive all at once. It came in pieces, small, almost polite. It sat in corners, waited for pauses. The first real argument happened over nothing. Dinner plates still on the table. Food barely touched. Claire mentioned the word assessment. Not loudly, not as a decision, just as a possibility. David didn't answer right away. He leaned back in his chair, hands folded. "How many people know?" he asked. Claire hesitated. "Not many." "That's already too many." No one raised their voice. That was the unsettling part. David had avoided the drawings until then. Not consciously. He worked late, came home tired. When the papers appeared on the kitchen counter, he stacked them neatly. Didn't look. That changed one evening when he picked up the wrong page. A drawing Noah had finished earlier that day. He studied it longer than intended. turned it sideways, then upright again. "These lines," he said, tapping lightly. "They're intentional." Claire didn't reply. She watched his finger trace the spacing. That was the moment something shifted. Not belief, but dismissal, loosened. The next week, a second psychologist joined the review. Older, specialized in developmental skepticism. He asked to observe without interaction. No questions, no prompts, just presence. Noah drew. Elena sat beside him, silent. At one point, Noah paused, lifted his head, looked directly at the man. "You're early," he said. The psychologist blinked. "I'm sorry?" Noah looked back down, continued drawing. Nothing else was said. Later, reviewing his notes, the psychologist wrote, "Child made no attempt to engage. Statement appeared situational. Then, underneath, unclear how." Elena's teachers requested a meeting. Not urgent, not disciplinary, just concern. She wasn't disruptive. She wasn't falling behind. She had simply stopped correcting mistakes, not her own. Other people's. When a classmate misread a date, Elena didn't react. When the teacher corrected a historical reference incorrectly, Elena shifted in her seat. Said nothing. That was new. At home, Elena asked her mother a question while brushing her teeth, mouth full of foam. "Do records lie?" Claire paused. "What kind of records?" Elena rinsed. "Spit. Old ones." The External Ethics Board reviewed the file at the end of the quarter. 3 members. Remote session. No names attached. They didn't discuss causes. They discussed risk. Specifically, contamination. One member asked, "Is it possible the children are influencing each other?" The psychologist answered carefully, "They do not reinforce each other verbally." "Children don't need words," the member replied. The line was noted, underlined. The board recommended no escalation, but also no closure. The case remained open, monitored. One night, Claire woke to the sound of paper. Not tearing, sliding. She found Noah on the floor of his room, papers spread around him. He wasn't frantic. He was sorting. She crouched beside him. "What are you doing?" He didn't look up. "Putting them back." "Back where?" He hesitated, just long enough to feel deliberate. "Order." She waited. Nothing else came. David began reading at night. Not about Egypt, about memory, neuroscience, false recall, sibling mirroring. He underlined passages, closed the books halfway through chapters, left them face down. The second psychologist requested one final joint session. No recording. Just observation. At the end, he spoke. Slowly. "I don't see pathology," he said. No relief followed. "But I don't see imagination either." Silence filled the room. He added, "I see restraint." The last entry of that phase is brief. No explanation. Just a note from Claire, handwritten, not part of the official file. "We have stopped asking questions. They have not. And somewhere between not asking and not answering, the case crossed a line, not into belief, into something harder. Attention. No one noticed the notebooks at first. They weren't hidden carefully. They didn't need to be. A drawer that was never opened, a box beneath winter clothes. Nothing dramatic. Just not shared. Elena started writing before Noah. Not sentences, lists, short lines, numbers without titles. She wrote standing up, then crossed things out. When Claire asked what she was doing, Elena answered without turning around. Fixing it. Fixing what? Elena paused, then shook her head. Doesn't matter. Noah's notebooks were different. He didn't write. He mapped. Straight edges. Angles measured by eye. He marked points, then erased them. Then marked them again, slightly shifted. Always the same corner of the page. Upper right. Claire once noticed faint indentations, as if the paper had been pressed before, as if it wasn't the first time those lines had existed. The first coordinate appeared accidentally, not spoken, not announced, written on the back of a grocery receipt. 2 numbers, a dash, another number. Elena stared at it for a long time before folding the paper. She didn't show it to Noah. She waited. The children stopped talking at night, at least out loud. Claire would wake and sense movement, a door opening, a step, but when she checked, both beds were occupied, eyes open, neither child pretending to sleep, just awake, waiting for something that didn't arrive. The psychologist noticed the shift in behavior during the next check-in. The children answered fewer questions, not evasively, selectively. When asked about the drawings, Noah replied, "They're done." When asked what that meant, he shrugged. Elena filled in quietly. "We don't need to add anything." A skeptical neurologist was consulted. Late 40s, published, known for debunking memory transfer claims. He reviewed the material without meeting the children. His response came back blunt. There is no known mechanism for memory persistence beyond individual neural development. Then, a second paragraph, shorter. However, the spatial consistency across independent drawings is atypical. He requested timestamps, original paper, ink analysis, not belief, verification. The notebooks were brought out that evening, placed on the table. Noah didn't resist. He watched. Elena stood near the window. When the neurologist pointed to a cluster of markings and asked what it represented, Noah answered, "A way in." The neurologist nodded. "Into what?" Noah didn't reply. Elena spoke instead. "Under." The room went quiet, not tense, focused. The neurologist asked one final question. "Has anyone suggested this to you?" Elena shook her head. "No," Noah added, without looking up. "They don't know it yet." That night, Elena took the folded receipt from her pocket, placed it beside Noah's notebook, unfolded it. Noah looked, didn't smile, didn't react. He picked up a pencil, drew a small circle around one number, then a line, then stopped. "That part moved," he said. Elena nodded. "I know. The coordinate was incomplete, but it was enough to be unsettling. Because it wasn't random, it aligned with something. Later, much later, the file gained a new label. Not public, internal use only. Restricted circulation, no press, no outside review. Only one instruction added at the top. Proceed without interpretation. Claire sat alone that night. Kitchen light off, phone in her hand, search bar empty. She didn't type the numbers, not yet. She folded the receipt, placed it back, and for the first time since the drawings began, she locked a drawer. The first match wasn't found by a professional. That mattered. It wasn't uncovered in a database or a journal. It didn't come with citations. It appeared on a screen, late at night, in a quiet kitchen. Claire had waited days, not because she was afraid of what she might find, because she wasn't sure what would happen if she did. When she finally unfolded the receipt again, the paper felt thinner than she remembered. 2 numbers, a dash, another number. She typed them in. No filters, no assumptions, just numbers. The result wasn't a location. Not exactly. It was a reference point, a grid coordinate used in early 20th century survey maps, outdated, largely abandoned. She didn't understand it, but she recognized the word beneath it. Valley. She closed the laptop, didn't tell anyone. The neurologist followed up 2 days later. He hadn't changed his position, but his tone had shifted. "I need to know," he said over the phone, "whether anyone in the household has a background in cartography or surveying." "No," Claire said. "Architecture?" "No." A pause. "Then I don't have an explanation for the consistency." He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. At school, Elena was assigned a group project, Ancient Civilizations. She didn't choose Egypt. She wasn't given Egypt. It was random. When the teacher announced the topic, Elena didn't react. She wrote the title at the top of the page, then stopped. Her pen hovered. Finally, she crossed it out, wrote something else instead, a word no one else noticed because it was spelled incorrectly, on purpose. That afternoon, a substitute teacher filled in for history. He mispronounced a name, corrected himself, moved on. Elena didn't raise her hand, but she wrote the correct pronunciation in the margin of her notebook, then circled it, twice. The ethics board reconvened quietly. No full session, just a review of new material. The neurologist submitted an addendum. The linguist declined further comment. The psychologist included one new observation. Children now withhold information until asked indirectly. The board's response was brief. Continue monitoring. Avoid reinforcement. The words belief and fabrication appeared nowhere. David asked to see the notebooks that evening. Not angrily, not skeptically, just deliberately. He sat at the table, turned pages, didn't interrupt. At one point he stopped, held one page longer than the rest. A rough outline, a slanted entryway, steps. He tapped the paper lightly. "How old were you when you drew this?" Noah thought for a moment. "Before." David waited. No clarification came. Elena spoke later, when Noah had gone to bed. Not immediately. She lingered by the door, as if deciding whether to say anything at all. "They don't talk the same way," she said. "Who?" "The people who write about it." David didn't ask what it was. He waited. "They explain," Elena continued, "but this doesn't explain itself." She shrugged. "That's how I know." The first academic withdrawal happened that week. An email, polite, short. "Given the sensitivities involved, I am stepping back from informal consultation." No justification, no accusation, just distance. Claire noticed something else then. Noah had stopped correcting his drawings. He finished them, closed the notebook, put the pencil down. When she asked if he was done, he nodded. For now. The silence changed again. It wasn't heavy, It was prepared, like a room after furniture is moved, space where something is meant to arrive. The final note of that phase came from the neurologist, handwritten, scanned. If this is construction, it is unusually disciplined. If it is recall, it lacks the instability typical of false memory. There was no conclusion. Just that. That night, Elena stood in the doorway of Noah's room. He was awake. She didn't knock. She said one thing. "They're closer than last time." Noah didn't ask who. He nodded. "I know. The decision wasn't made in a single moment. There was no sentence like, 'We should tell someone.' No agreement spoken out loud. It formed slowly, in glances, in pauses that lasted a little longer than before. The first person they considered was not a scientist. It wasn't an institution. It was someone whose job involved records, someone used to incomplete information, gaps, margins, an archivist, not local, not connected, recommended quietly by the Egyptologist who had already stepped away. He didn't ask to see the children. He asked for scans. Only scans. Claire sent 5 images, not the most complex ones, not the coordinates, just enough to show structure. The reply took 4 days. When it came, it was cautious. "These are not copies of any known catalogued inscriptions." Then another line. "But the internal consistency suggests intentional system use." No conclusions, just acknowledgement. The archivist requested dates. When were the drawings made? In what order? Claire hesitated before answering. She checked the notebooks. The earliest drawing was dated. Not by her. By Noah. In the corner. Small handwriting. Not numbers. A symbol. She didn't mention that. Around this time, Elena asked a question that didn't sound like one. "If we tell them everything," she said, "do we have to stay?" Claire didn't answer immediately. "What do you mean?" Elena looked down. At the place. Noah was listening from the doorway. He added quietly, "They won't let us in again if we don't finish." No one asked what they were finishing. No one asked where "again" was. The silence did that work. The ethics board issued a recommendation the following week. Still internal, still cautious. Given the increasing specificity of material, limited disclosure to an external domain specialist may be warranted. No list of names, no instructions beyond that. Just permission. David made the call, not to a university, to a museum, not a director, a field archaeologist, someone who worked with incomplete sites, unstable terrain, unverified leads. The archaeologist listened, didn't interrupt, didn't laugh. At the end, he said one thing: "If you're wrong, nothing happens. If you're right, someone should at least look." They didn't tell Noah. They didn't tell Elena. Not yet. But both children noticed the shift. Adults moved differently. Phones stayed on silent. Conversations ended when someone entered the room. One evening, Elena placed a folded page on the table. She didn't open it. She slid it toward her mother. Claire unfolded it. A sketch, rougher than the others. A slope, loose stone, a dark opening, one word beneath it. Not a name, a condition. "After," the archaeologist replied a week later. His message was short. "I can't promise a dig, but I can promise a site visit." Dates followed. Coordinates were requested. That night, Noah brought out the receipt, the folded one. He placed it beside the sketch. Claire watched his hands. They weren't shaking. Elena leaned in. "That's still right," she said. Noah nodded. "It hasn't moved." The file changed status again. No announcement, just a new stamp. External consultation authorized. The last note before departure was written by Claire. Not for the board. For herself. "If this ends here, we stop." The sentence was underlined. Twice. 2 days before the flight, Elena stood in the hallway, backpack on, shoes still off. "Do we tell him?" she asked. Claire looked at Noah. He was drawing, finishing a line. He spoke without looking up. "They already know." The airport was louder than Claire expected. Announcements overlapping, wheels against tile, voices rising, then disappearing. Noah covered one ear with his hand. Not both, just one. Elena noticed. She didn't comment. They moved through security without incident. Names checked, passports stamped. Routine. That detail would matter later. The archaeologist met them at the gate. Mid-50s, field clothes, not a suit. Sun-worn skin. He shook hands with the adults first. When he turned to the children, he paused. Not long, just long enough to register something. He crouched slightly to Noah's height. "What do you draw?" he asked. Noah looked at him, then at the floor. "Places." The man nodded. No follow-up. The flight south was uneventful. Elena slept, head against the window. Noah didn't. He traced patterns on the tray table with his finger. Same spacing, same pauses. Claire watched, then looked away. They landed just before sunset. Heat lingering in the air. Dust visible in the light. No banners, no ceremony. A driver waited with a clipboard. Names printed. Correctly. That too would matter later. The permits took longer than expected. 3 offices, multiple signatures. The archaeologist handled most of it. Claire sat with the children on a bench outside. Elena watched people pass. Tourists, locals, uniformed guards. At one point, she leaned close to her mother. "They don't walk the same anymore," she said. "Who?" Elena tilted her head toward the building. "The ones inside." The hotel was modest. No view, no decorations. The archaeologist preferred it that way. "Less attention," he said. Noah placed his notebook in the bedside drawer. Didn't open it. That night, a meeting took place in a small conference room. No recording equipment, just notes. The archaeologist laid out expectations. "There will be no excavation," he said. "Not yet. This is a survey. Observation only. If there's nothing," he added, "we leave." No one argued. The coordinates were entered into a shared map the next morning, projected on the wall, grid overlay, elevation markers. The archaeologist adjusted the scale, stopped, adjusted it again. "Interesting," he said. No explanation followed. He zoomed in. A cluster of unstable terrain, collapsed stone, unsurveyed. "Why hasn't this been checked before?" Claire asked. He didn't answer immediately. "Because," he said finally, "it's inconvenient." They drove out before noon. 2 vehicles, 1 local guide. Noah watched the road. Elena counted turns silently. At one point, the guide slowed. Pointed. "Landslide," he said. Long time ago. Noah's hand tightened around his notebook. He didn't open it. They stopped where the road ended. The rest was on foot, equipment unloaded. Nothing heavy, no tools that would suggest intent. The archaeologist was careful about that. They walked, heat rising, stone shifting underfoot. At a certain point, Noah stopped it. Everyone else took another step before noticing. He pointed. Not dramatically, just there. The archaeologist checked the map, then looked at the ground, then back at the map. "We're early," he said. Noah shook his head. "Sideway," he said. The guide frowned, took 2 steps left. The ground changed, subtle, different color stone. The archaeologist exhaled slowly. They marked the spot. No digging, just photographs, measurements. The archaeologist knelt, ran his hand over the surface. Stone, packed debris. He stood. "Tomorrow," he said. Not because he believed, because procedure demanded daylight. That night, no one slept well. Not because of fear, because of anticipation that had nowhere to go. Elena stood by the window, looked out at nothing. Noah lay on the bed, eyes open. Claire sat between them, listening. At 3:41 a.m., Elena spoke. Not loudly. "They didn't close it right." Claire waited. Noah added, "They didn't expect anyone to come back." The next morning, they returned with the same care, same route, same pace. The archaeologist reviewed the permits again, checked his watch, 8:52 a.m. He nodded. Surface only, he reminded everyone. No one disagreed. They cleared loose stones. By hand, no force, no tools that could be questioned later, layer by layer. At 9:37, the texture changed. Not visibly, but audibly. A different sound when stone met stone. The archaeologist froze, held up his hand. Everyone stopped. Silence. Wind moving dust. Nothing else. He crouched, brushed away a final layer, and paused. There was a line. Straight, too straight. Not geological, not accidental. The archaeologist didn't speak. He looked at Noah. Just once. Then back at the ground. No one said it out loud. They all saw it. A straight edge beneath irregular stone. Too precise, too deliberate. The archaeologist lowered himself closer. Didn't touch it at first. He traced the air above the surface with his finger, stopping just short. "This isn't erosion," he said. Not as a conclusion, as an observation. He brushed once, then again. The line extended. Not far. Just enough. Enough to confirm intent. The guide shifted his weight, looked around. No tourists, no cameras, only wind and stone. The archaeologist checked his watch again. 9:42. He noted it in his field book. Not the line. The time. They worked slowly. Not digging, clearing, removing what had already fallen. Each stone placed aside carefully. Measured, photographed, catalogued. Procedure first. Belief didn't enter the process. At 10:06, the surface gave way. Not collapsed. Released. A small hollow appeared. Dark. Still. The archaeologist stopped everyone. He knelt, lowered a flashlight. The beam cut across dust, then stopped. On something flat. Vertical. He pulled the light back, switched it off, turned to Claire. "We need documentation before anything else," he said. No urgency in his voice. But he didn't stand up either. They called it a subsurface anomaly in the notes. That language mattered. No assumptions, no narrative, just description. The archaeologist brushed again. This time the edge revealed markings, faint but unmistakable. Not random scratches, not modern. Carved. The guide inhaled sharply, then stepped back. The archaeologist raised his hand, not in warning, in control. He traced one symbol with the tip of his brush, stopped, did not finish the line. He looked over his shoulder, at Noah. Noah hadn't moved. He stood where he had been since the clearing began. Notebook still closed. He said nothing. The archaeologist turned back to the stone, finished the stroke. The symbol emerged fully. He didn't translate it. He didn't need to. He knew enough to recognize format. "This isn't a marker," he said quietly. "It's a seal." No one responded. The seal was not centered. That detail mattered. It suggested haste or constraint. Something had gone wrong when it was placed. At 10:19, Elena spoke. She hadn't until then. "They turned it," she said. The archaeologist looked up. "Turned what?" "The stone," she replied. "After." Noah nodded once. "Because it cracked," he added. The archaeologist didn't ask how they knew. He wrote something down. Not their words, just orientation inconsistent. They cleared a final layer, carefully. The seal was intact, but the surrounding stone was not. A fracture line ran diagonally across the surface. Old. Very old. The archaeologist pressed his palm flat against the rock, not for balance, for feel. "This was sealed quickly," he said, "not ceremonially." That was as far as he went. He stood, looked at the sky, then back at the stone. "We stop here," he said. No protest followed. Even the guide nodded. They covered the area, not to hide it, to protect it. Canvas, markers, coordinates logged. The archaeologist photographed the seal one last time, then closed his notebook. On the walk back, no one spoke. Footsteps sounded louder than before. At the vehicle, the archaeologist turned to Claire. "This changes the nature of the visit," he said. "How?" she asked. He chose his words carefully. "It means this site wasn't forgotten," he said. "It was left." That night, Noah opened his notebook for the first time in days. He added one line, just one, then closed it again. Elena watched, didn't ask. At 22:14, the archaeologist sent an email. Recipients: Museum Director, Regional Antiquities Office, Ethics Board Liaison. Subject line: Preliminary Survey, Anomalous Sealed Structure. No mention of children, no mention of names, just stone. At 3:02, Elena woke suddenly, sat up, looked at Noah's bed across the room. He was already awake. She whispered, "They're going to open it." Noah didn't answer right away. Then, "They have to." The permits came faster than expected. Not immediately, but faster than they should have. 2 signatures. 1 conditional approval. A narrow window. 48 hours. No excavation license. Not officially. A controlled intervention. Surface breach only. Language matters when history is watching. The team doubled in size by morning. Not specialists, observers, a structural engineer, a conservator, a representative from the Antiquities Office. No cameras, no press. Phones were collected before sunrise. They reached the site at 7:18. The canvas cover was still in place, undisturbed. That mattered. The engineer crouched first, ran a device along the fracture line, stopped, ran it again. "There's a cavity behind this," he said. "No speculation, just physics." The archaeologist reviewed the procedure. Out loud, slow, minimal force. Single contact point. No widening. He looked at the children, not to ask permission, to acknowledge presence. They stood back. Noah held his notebook. Didn't open it. The first contact was made at 8:02. A small tool, almost delicate. The seal did not break. It shifted. A sound followed. Not a crack, a release. Air moved, not outward, inward. The conservator froze, raised her hand. "Stop." Everyone did. Noah exhaled. Just once. At 8:04, the seal separated along the fracture. Clean. Too clean. The archaeologist stepped forward, lowered his light. The beam entered the cavity. Dust lifted, then settled. The space beyond was narrow. Vertical walls, worked stone. Not natural. No one cheered. No one spoke. The antiquities officer cleared his throat. "This will require documentation," he said. The archaeologist nodded. Already writing. They widened the opening by centimeters, not inches, enough for a camera probe. The feed appeared on a small monitor. Black, then grey, then structure. A wall. Smooth. Carved. The camera tilted. A symbol came into view. Faded, but intact. The conservator leaned closer. Didn't touch the screen. "Those aren't decorative," she said. Not impressed. Concerned. At 8:27, the probe reached the floor. Flat. No debris. Which meant... "It was cleaned before sealing," the archaeologist said. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The antiquities officer asked a procedural question. "Any indication of looting?" The archaeologist shook his head. "No entry after closure." "How can you be sure?" He pointed to the feed. "Because nothing was disturbed." They paused. The team stepped back. The archaeologist turned to Noah. Not theatrically. Not dramatically. "Is there more than one chamber?" he asked. Noah looked at the monitor. Then away. "Yes." "Connected?" Noah hesitated. Just long enough. After the turn. The engineer wrote that down, not because he believed it, because he didn't know why he shouldn't. Permission was granted at 9:11. Limited entry. One person. Safety tether. No artifact removal. The archaeologist volunteered. No discussion. He entered slowly. Feet first. Helmet light steady. The radio stayed silent. Not for drama. To avoid vibration. Inside, the temperature dropped. That was logged. So was humidity. Everything was logged, including the pause. At 9:19, when the archaeologist stopped moving, didn't speak, didn't breathe loudly, just stood. When his voice finally came through the radio, it was different, lower, measured. "I'm in the first chamber," he said. No description followed. Seconds passed. Then, "There are 2 sarcophagi." A pause. Smaller than expected. Another pause. Placed parallel. Outside, Elena closed her eyes. She didn't sit. She didn't sway. She just waited. Noah opened his notebook. For the first time that day. He turned to the last page. Didn't draw. He wrote one word. "Both." The archaeologist continued. "There's a second passage," he said. "Angled, not axial." His breathing shifted. Not fear. Focus. "It's narrow. he added. 18 meters. The engineer looked up sharply. No one said why. At 9:31, the archaeologist stopped again. This time, longer. When he spoke, he chose each word. There's an altar between them. No reaction outside. None that could be seen. The placement is intentional, he continued. Symmetrical. Silence. Then. And there are two identical objects on it, the conservator whispered. The antiquities officer closed his notebook. No one asked what the objects were. They already knew. Not consciously. But the shape had been drawn too many times. At 9:36, the archaeologist said one final thing. Something that would not appear in the official report. I don't understand how anyone could have known this. They sealed the entrance again at 10:12. Not permanently, but enough. Enough for the day. Enough for everyone. That night, no one slept. Not because of excitement, because the silence had changed again. It was no longer waiting. It was complete. The report did not include adjectives. It avoided them deliberately. No remarkable, no extraordinary, just placement. Material, condition. That was the agreement. The conservator entered the chamber first the next morning. Not to examine the sarcophagi, not yet. She went straight to the altar. Measured distance, height, orientation. She did not touch the objects. She documented. 2 pendants, identical. Gold alloy consistent with late dynastic craftsmanship. Inlays of carnelian. Suspension points worn. Not broken, used. The sarcophagi remained sealed. That, too, was intentional. The decision came from the Antiquities Office. No opening without extended authorization. No exceptions. No discussion. The lids were photographed. Inscriptions logged. Names recorded. Carefully. Quietly. They did not read them aloud. The papyri were found in the second chamber, not stacked, not stored, placed, as if meant to be encountered after passing through the first space. The archaeologist did not remove them. He described them. Position, orientation, seal impressions. One line of text was legible without enhancement. Not a prayer, not a title, a statement. Bound by oath. That phrase did not appear in the summary. It appeared in the appendix. Outside, Elena sat on a folding chair. Still. Noah stood beside her. He did not watch the entrance. He watched the ground. When the conservator emerged, Elena looked up. Not to ask, to check. The woman hesitated before speaking, then said only, "They were careful." Elena nodded. Noah didn't react. The ethics board convened that afternoon. Emergency session? Remote? No recording allowed. The archaeologist presented the facts. No interpretations. The engineer spoke next. Structural anomalies. Intentional misalignment. Rapid sealing indicators. The neurologist joined last. He listened. Did not interrupt. When asked if any known cognitive mechanism could explain the children's prior descriptions, he paused, then said, "No. Not impossible, just no." That night, Noah closed his notebook. Completely. Not just a page. The whole thing. He placed it in the drawer. Did not lock it. Did not hide it. Elena watched. Didn't comment. She folded the receipt, the one with the numbers, placed it inside, then shut the drawer. The children slept. Fully. No waking. No counting. Claire noticed. She didn't mention it. She didn't want to interrupt whatever had settled. The official statement was released 2 weeks later. Carefully worded. Previously undocumented sealed structure identified during controlled survey. No mention of children. No mention of drawings. No mention of names spoken before discovery. The omission was deliberate. Academic responses followed predictable lines. Some called it coincidence. Others suggested subconscious exposure. One paper proposed post hoc alignment. The archaeologist did not respond. He declined interviews. He returned to fieldwork elsewhere. The psychologist closed the file, not with a conclusion, with a sentence. Symptoms resolved without intervention. She did not specify which symptoms. Months passed. Elena returned to school, corrected mistakes again, smiled when appropriate. Noah drew houses, animals, trees, nothing else. One evening, Elena asked a final question, not urgent, not heavy. "Do you think they're done?" Claire considered it. "I think," she said slowly, "whatever needed to be remembered was." Elena nodded, satisfied. Noah added one last thing before turning off the light. "They didn't follow us." Claire waited. "Who?" Noah shrugged. "The quiet." The drawer stayed closed. No one checked it. No one needed to. The final report ends on page 47. No summary section, no conclusions, just signatures, dates, stamps, and a note in the margin. Further analysis pending. That note has no follow-up. Publicly, the case became small. A paragraph in a regional bulletin, a footnote in a conference slide. No headlines, no documentaries. Not then. People moved on. That mattered too. At home, nothing was said about the site. Not because it was forbidden, because there was nothing left to add. The children didn't ask questions anymore. They didn't correct adults. They didn't draw maps. They lived inside their days again. Noah learned to ride a bike that summer. He fell once, scraped his knee. Didn't cry. Elena helped him up, brushed dust from his hands. That was all. The drawer stayed closed, not sealed, not locked, just unnecessary. Claire noticed that detail one evening and stopped thinking about it halfway through. Some thoughts don't need finishing. The archaeologist sent one final message months later. Not to the board. To Claire, it was short. "I have no framework for what happened, only a record of what I saw." No request followed. No question. The neurologist published a paper the following year. Not about the case. About limits. About how absence of explanation is not the same as evidence of impossibility. The paper cited no names, but one line stood out. Some data resolves by disappearing. Elena asked about the trip once. Not the site, the flight. She wanted to know if planes always turned slightly before landing. Claire said yes. That was enough. Noah never spoke the old names again. Not once. When asked later if he remembered drawing symbols, he shrugged. "I draw lots of things," he said. True, the site remains restricted. Not because of what was found, because of how it was found. That distinction appears in an internal memo. Unpublished. Years later, When the valley was mentioned in passing during a news segment, Claire noticed something. Noah didn't look up. Elena did. Just for a second. Then she looked away, as if confirming something had stayed where it was meant to stay. Nothing followed them home. No dreams, no sounds, no counting. The quiet did not return, and it did not need to. If there is a question left in this story, it isn't whether the children remembered something. It's whether remembering is always meant to last. The record doesn't answer that. It wasn't designed to. Some stories resolve by being explained, others by becoming unnecessary. This one was archived and left there.